Welcome to Conversations Live. For more than a decade, we've brought you the best in books, entertainment, and current events. When the movers and shakers of the world have something to say to you, they say it to us first. Now, here's your host, Cyrus Webb.
And welcome back, everyone, to Conversations Live. I'm your host, Cyrus Webb. Glad you all could join us once again. Whether you're tuning in on the radio dial in Mississippi at WYAD 94.1 FM, we welcome you. Or at one of our online affiliates around the world, we're glad to have all of you with us as well. We're excited to welcome Mitch Horowitz to our program today. Mitch is not only a writer and historian, but also the editor of a great new book by someone that all of us, I think, have heard about, that being Napoleon Hill. The book is The Path to Personal Power. The book is available now. There are partners at Amazon.com. We'll remind you of that a little bit later. We're going to talk to Mitch not only about how he has been able to benefit from the teachings of Napoleon Hill, but also how this new book is so powerful and what it's able to share about the true path to not only personal power but also success, something that all of us kind of talk about and look for ways to be able to achieve. If just now hearing about the new book, we'll tell you at the end of our segment how you can get your own copy. But Mitch, hello to you and welcome to the program.
Thank you. Very glad to be here.
Well, I'm excited to speak with you, Mitch. I mentioned to you before we began the segment, you wrote a great article called This is Napoleon Hill's Most Ignored Secret to Success that appeared on MarketWatch.com. And there were a couple of things that you mentioned in that I think our audience will appreciate in relation to this conversation, and that is that you have not only, of course, studied Hill's methods over the years, but also benefited from them. So what is it like for you now to be the editor of this new book and to be able to help share it with the world?
Well, not only is it a labor of love, but I make a solemn promise to myself in everything that I do, which is that I would never offer anything to your listeners that I wouldn't offer to a member of my own family. And my deepest conviction is that Hill did identify 13 basic steps to success, and he identified traits that seem to be common across the lives of exceptional people. And as I discovered Hill's ideas and began applying them in a very dedicated way, including belonging myself to a mastermind group, the results have been remarkable in my life. My productivity has gone up. My writing ability has, I think, unfolded with a great deal of grace. And my books seem to reach the public's attention. So I feel that I'm offering something that I've tested in the laboratory of my own experience.
I think one of the things that Napoleon Hill has showed us all, and, most people know him, of course, Mitch, from the book Think and Grow Rich, but I think, you have to be able to get past the fear of what other people may think about what you're doing, what you even might think might not happen. How did you do that for yourself? I mean, how did Napoleon Hill's writings help you to realize the importance of getting past the fear in order to achieve the things you've been able to achieve?
It was very interesting. I've been reading Think and Grow Rich for years. I reissued a revised and updated edition in 2005, which has done very well. But the truth is, for several years I was really a casual reader. I didn't approach the book in a steady, go-to-the-wall fashion. And there was one day where I decided, this goes back to 2013, that I was going to sit down and I was going to start anew reading this book as though I had never encountered it before, and I was going to do the exercises as if my life depended on it. That was my personal commitment, and see what I found. And so I didn't talk to anybody about it except for members of my mastermind group, which is kind of a support group of like-minded colleagues. We meet regularly over conference call every Tuesday morning. And I didn't go around advertising what I was doing to people because, in fact, one of the things that Hill points out is you have to be very careful of other people's opinions when you're embarking on your own most cherished plans. He warns very stringently against soliciting general opinions. One of his chapters is about accurate thinking, and accurate thinking means finding information that could help you, by all means working with other people, but being very careful and very stringent about who you share your plans with and who you solicit information from, because a lot of people are just simply wrong. I've had brilliant people give me very wrong advice. So, Hill's program is one of action. It's one of many things. It includes visualization. It includes auto-suggestion. It includes many different steps. It's like a wheel of many spokes. But one of the things he warns against is just routinely kind of casually sharing your opinions, soliciting opinions from other people and sharing your plans with other people, because sometimes, frankly, people are jealous, or they take a certain perverse thrill in running down other people's ideas. Relatives or friends might decide that running down your ideas, even in a joking way, is kind of a legitimate act of discourse. And frankly, some people are just envious because they're not acting on their own ideas. So,
right.
I dedicated myself to Think and Grow Rich with unreserved zeal and meticulousness. And I would suggest that to everybody listening. That doesn't mean that you have to go around telling other people what you're doing. You can be very reserved about it. The only people that you need to talk to are people who have vital pieces of information for you, and the members of your mastermind group, which is a support group.
Right. We're going to talk more about that, in fact, in his conversations with Carnegie. He talks about the mastermind group as well. I want to say, for those who are just tuning in either on the radio side or online, you're listening to Conversations Live. We're excited to welcome Mitch Horowitz to our program today. He's not only a writer and historian in his own right, but also the editor of the new book, The Path to Personal Power by Napoleon Hill. Now, I guess a lot of people are wondering, of course, Mitch, about how this book now came to be published this year. Can you kind of walk us through how it is that now this year this book's available?
Sure. Napoleon Hill first wrote the book in 1941, and it contains his 3 core ideas. He felt all of his 13 steps, as they appear in Think and Grow Rich, were vital, but if you needed a kind of 911, if you needed an entry point, if you needed to understand how you could spring into using his ideas, he basically boiled it down to 3 steps. One is having an absolutely passionate, well-defined aim. The other is a mastermind group, which I've been mentioning, a support group. And the other is doing more work and better work than you're paid for. Those are his 3 core ideas in Think and Grow Rich, although all the steps of the book are important. So Hill writes the book in 1941, and shortly thereafter, the U.S. Enters the Second World War, and the culture and the economy kind of changes overnight. There's paper rationing, the publishing industry changes, transportation and other pillars of the economy are directed towards the war effort. So the book never got published, and it just sat in a vault, so to speak, and it was rediscovered a couple of years ago by the keepers of the Napoleon Hill Foundation, and they came to me with it, and it's the first time it's seen the light of day since 1941.
Wow. And I think that is what makes it so powerful, because it is, and the thing that I got when I was reading it, Mitch, is that how timely it is. You mentioned, of course, about the mastermind groups. That is a big part of what is discussed, especially in the first part of the book. And one of the things that it kind of is related to is the way, of course, that we look at organizations, especially when it comes to governmental organizations and the way that the system is set up. We find that in the conversations with Carnegie in the book. And I wanted to read, actually, a part of that, because I think it really helps us to understand how that we all kind of work together in this. And part of that conversation says, if all employers and employees related themselves to one another under a mastermind plan similar to the one under which our country is operated, there will be no occasion for serious misunderstanding between them. I thought that is an important thing, especially when we look at the world today. How has that benefited you, Mitch? And what do you think people that are listening to this conversation can be able to benefit from when it comes to having this mastermind group for themselves?
Well, human nature is complex, and our economic relations are complex, so there might be a touch of idealism, frankly, in that statement. But you can undertake the project of forming a mastermind group with one other person. I mean, usually the mastermind group numbers between 2 and 7 people, like-minded people, people who get along harmoniously, who have similar values, who get together in a sense of comity and mutual benefit. And it can start with as few as 2 people. My mastermind group happens to have 7, but you can have as many as few as 2. And that is sufficient to begin. So I would look at it as a vital personal tool, because you will get forms of support from the mastermind group, not only in terms of being able to share confidences with another set of people and getting advice from a group of like-minded people, but Hill came to feel that if members of the mastermind group kind of pooled their minds together, as it were, a sort of third mind would become present. Ralph Waldo Emerson called it the oversoul. Hill called it the mastermind. Whether one is willing to accept the existence of what Hill referred to as the psychic phase of the mastermind, and I do accept it, you receive all kinds of benefits from forming this support group. So, and I mentioned in my Dow Jones article that it is his most neglected step, and the reason it's his most neglected step is because people are private. We like to feel that we can be self-sufficient. Nobody feels that he has time to schedule another meeting in his day. Some people feel that the idea of a group meeting is kind of mawkish or embarrassing, feels kind of woo-woo to people, but it's no such thing. It's just forming a partnership of people with like-minded values and goals. So it's very easy to neglect, but Hill emphasized that great power and great personal refinement could not be attained without following that step.
I love the way it's worded in the chapter, the Mastermind Principle. Mitch, I want to actually read this part because it really
Sure.
shows that it's not just about individuals being able to feel as though they're superior to others in a group, but also willing to admit that we can learn from one another. It says this on page 141. There is still another feature of the Mastermind Principle worthy of analysis. It is the fact that an individual whose mind has been stepped up through contact with other minds in a mastermind meeting becomes conscious of a form of mind stimulation which amounts to intoxication. And this condition lasts often for many hours after the meeting ends. And,
Yes.
I think we all have talked about not being the smartest person in the room and the importance of surrounding ourselves with individuals that we can learn from and that will push us to grow. Before this was actually mentioned in the book, he gave the example of the dog, how a dog by itself may not kill a sheep, but if you're around a group of dogs that are bent on sheep killing, well then, more than likely that other dogs will follow. I mean, talk to us about how important it's been for you, Mitch, to realize the importance of having others around you that you can learn from and grow with.
Well, marathon runners seem to do better when they are running as part of a group rather than running solo. There is a certain stimulation that any of us can witness in crowds. On the negative side, this is sometimes referred to as a kind of mob psychology, but it can also come in the form of a great joy and euphoria. You could witness that at a rock concert. You could witness that at an evangelical church service. So there's no question that an amalgam of group thinking can be an enormously powerful mind stimulant, and this is what Hill is getting at. There are lots of other things that could be mind stimulants as well. Some of them are harmful in the long run, like drugs or alcohol. They include love, sex, motivated by feelings of great altruism, loyalty. Hill lists a number of things that move men and women to perform tasks that seem greater than what they're capable of under ordinary circumstances. So the idea of the mastermind is to summon up that kind of mind stimulation without any of the dangers involved, for example, in pursuing risky behavior or intoxicants.
And I think the idea that we will always grow, and I think that's the other thing you mentioned about, I think, the accountability aspect of this, Mitch. Another thing that's mentioned earlier on in the book, in the Mastermind Principle, is the idea of always learning. On page 96, one of the things that's mentioned is the person who stops studying the day he finishes school will never become an educated person, no matter how much knowledge he may have accumulated while he was going to school. Life itself is a great school, and everything that inspires thought is a teacher. I love that because I think it really shows us that we never stop learning, we never stop growing, and we never have gotten to a point where we know it all. Do you think that is one of the reasons why all these years later, Mitch, that we are still going to Napoleon's teachings, because he realized that importance of that?
He seems to offer ideas that reach people in their lives at just the moment in which they need them. Not every idea in his books are going to speak to every individual in the same way, but it is important to do all of them because he had a very definite idea that these traits were common in the lives of exceptional people. And he felt absolutely certain that we settle very quickly into kinds of prejudices, and it was extremely important that we do independent research, not just take people's word for things, not solicit opinions, not listen to groupthink, And all of this is, of course, running riot online today. I mean, that was something Napoleon Hill couldn't even have begun to conceive of. But he talks about the vital importance of doing your own research and being very circumspect about that research and who you solicit ideas from.
Right. The other thing, and we talk about it a lot on this program, Mitch, is the idea of what success is. And I have definitely found that my thoughts on success have evolved over the years. And one of the things that is also mentioned in this mastermind principle is the idea of how we look at success and what we're being able to look for. Of course, we all want to be able to set goals for ourselves. I think that's an important thing. But on page 100 of the book, I want to just read a bit of this because I think this is something great for us to talk about in relation to this. Too many people look for success in the distance, far from where they are, and altogether too often they search for it through complicated plans based upon a belief in miracles and luck. As Russell Cornwell so aptly stated, the matter in his famous lecture, some people seem to think the grass is greener on the other side of the fence from where they stand, and they pass up the acres of diamonds in the forms of ideas and opportunities available to them through the minds of their daily associates. You know, I think that goes in line with, how a lot of us try to live these days, Mitch, and that is to be more present and to be more aware of what's happening day by day. How has that benefited you?
Well, I think that one thing I've always believed and that I found confirmed in Napoleon Hill is that when somebody has a workable idea, it's usually a very simple idea. When they start to add layer upon layer of complexity to their idea, when they start to talk about it, ponder it, assemble what seem to me sometimes to be superfluous bits of information, they're avoiding the actual task of what they're setting out to do. I don't know whether Napoleon really said this. There's a lot of things attributed to him that may be apocryphal, but reportedly he said the only way to take Vienna is to take Vienna. I mean, you just have to go on the march, and it's very important that when you have an ideal towards which you're working and something that you wish to attain, whatever it is, whether you're an artist or a soldier or an entrepreneur or an activist, whatever your activity in life, it's so vitally important to begin, even if it means beginning in just a small way. You don't have to conquer Vienna, so to speak, on the first day, but you do have to begin the march, and you really do have to begin. When people don't begin, when they ponder too much, when they assemble secondary bits of information, when they talk about their plans, usually they're not going to do anything. And I find, to be frank, most people never do anything. They talk without acting. And Hill's books are really for people who want to act. And that's my wish for everyone listening to this show today, that if you have something that is deeply dear to you, an attainment, an ideal, something towards which you're striving, begin. It's so vitally important.
Exactly. So true, and I think that's something all of us can benefit from. Again, everyone, you're listening to Conversations Live. Mitch Horowitz is our guest for this segment. He's a writer and historian, as well as the editor of the new book by Napoleon Hill, The Path to Personal Power. It's available now through our friends at Amazon.com. You guys can head over there and be able to get it for yourself. We're about to let you guys know how you can stay connected with Mitch as well. So, Mitch, what is your hope? You just mentioned part of that, I think, here, but when people finish the Path to Personal Power, and I think realizing that it is a path, it is a journey, what is it that you hope they're able to take away from it that they can then begin to apply in their lives?
My deepest hope is that it will first of all inspire them to really ask in a very self-scrutinizing, mature way what their chief definite aim is. That is so important because most of us walk through life thinking that we already know what our aims are. We might have a kind of a mixture of aims, some of which are self-contradictory. We might have a lot of weakly felt aims, but it is so important, and Hill felt this was the starting point of all success, again, however you define it and whatever walk of life you're in. All success has its starting point with the selection and the articulation of a very simple, passionately felt, even obsessive aim. We think of the word obsession as being a negative thing today. We think of it as something that you diagnose and treat. But the fact is, Hill said that in the lives of hundreds of people who he looked at who had achieved really exceptional things in the world, inventors, stage performers, soldiers, generals, industrialists, you always found one obsessively felt aim. So my wish would be that whoever comes to this book starts by really clarifying for themselves what their definite chief aim is. And I promise you, you will find steps in this book that will facilitate your beginnings, that will help move you towards it. I feel very strongly about not recommending anything to people that I haven't experienced myself, and that has been my experience.
Yeah. You know, I think the other thing is, and you alluded to this at the beginning of the conversation, Mitch, and it's really, I think, illustrated in the chapter, going the extra mile, and that is a quote that's found on page 167. If you do not render more services than that for which you are paid, you are already getting all your worth, and you have no right to ask for more. It goes on to say this, and I want to share this one last thing here. It says, we look at men who have arrived and say how fortunate or how lucky. All too often we fail to inquire into the source of their luck. For if we did, we might learn that their luck consisted of their habit of rendering more service and better service than they were paid for, in the case of the little man with the big pack. And that is a great story in itself. And I think that is a reason why I wanted to mention that as we close here, is because I think a lot of times there are people who look around and say, wow, look at what that person did, instead of asking, how did they do it? You know, how did they get to that place? And is that one of the things that you've been able to kind of be able to develop in your mastermind group as well, Mitch?
Absolutely. I mean, my feeling is, for example, if you're delivering a project to somebody, whether you're a contractor, whether you're a writer, whatever you do, I mean, I'm going to take this down to a very basic level. Finish your work beautifully, hand it in neatly, well organized. It should look like a object example of exactly how the job should be done by everybody else. Not only will you have the satisfaction and the remuneration of doing a good job, but the person to whom you delivered the job will tell other people and will use you probably as an example of how a job is well done. It's very common that people will finish a piece of work, whatever it may be, maybe whether it's a construction job or giving a haircut, writing a song, and they will deliver something that they sort of just got past the post on, but didn't complete with that extra degree of zeal and perfection. And when they hand it in to whomever the end user is, or prepare it for the end user, maybe they don't deliver it with the degree of aesthetic excellence that a really good job requires. I'm a publisher. I have people who turn into me all the time, manuscripts, for example, without tables of content, without numbered pages. And you remember that. So don't be that person. Be the person who always goes that extra mile.
Well, we really appreciate the time, Mitch. We know this is a busy time for you, and we definitely appreciate the work that has gone into making this book available for all of us now to be able to read. Again, The Path to Personal Power by Napoleon Hill, edited by our guest today, Mitch Horowitz. Mitch, let our audience know how they can stay connected with you.
Sure thing. If you just put my name into Google, Mitch Horowitz, it'll take you to my website. There's lots of links to articles and videos, other pieces of information. If you want to ask me a question, my email is on my website. It is my bona fide real email. You're welcome to use it.
All right, well, Mitch, again, congratulations to you and, of course, the great people at Random House. And thank you so much again for the time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
And we thank your audience for tuning in to another great segment of Conversations Live. If you all came in late and missed part of the conversation with Mitch, don't worry. Thanks to our online friends, you all can catch the replay right after we go off the air. The link is already available through our social media sites. So head over to facebook.com/CyrusWebb or go over to twitter.com/CyrusWebb. If you click on the link there, you can listen to the show completely for free and share with your friends from there too. Until next time, I'm your host, Cyrus Webb, saying as always, enjoy your day, enjoy your life, enjoy your world. Make sure you take out time to enjoy some good music as well as a great book. Thank you all for choosing Conversations Live. You all make it a great one.